find your seats and welcome to this afternoon's event on the future of floating PV and BESS in Asia. On behalf of the organizers of this event, I have the pleasure of introducing our moderator for this afternoon. Attorney Jose Laig Jr., also known as Jay for most people, is a seasoned energy law expert and policy advocate with a distinguished career in both public and private sectors. He is currently a senior partner at the Divina Law Offices and serves as president of the Developers of Renewable Energy for Advancement, the umbrella organization of renewable energy associations in the Philippines. He is also a director of the Philippine Energy Research and Policy Institute and a co-chair of the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Committee at the European Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines. Jay previously served as Undersecretary in the Department of Energy and Chairman of the Renewable Energy Board, where he led major initiatives such as the National Renewable Energy Program and the Philippine Energy Contracting Rounds. His legal career includes senior roles as Chevron, the Asian Development Bank, and SAICIP Salazar, and teaching at the University of Philippines College of Law. A highest honors in business economics and a law graduate from UP, he earned his Masters of Laws from Cornell Law School and is licensed to practice in both the Philippines and New York. So with that, you all know that we're in very good hands for this afternoon session. So Jay, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I still see some seats in front. Maybe those at the back can come forward. Don't worry, we will not have any recitation today. I sound like a professor because I am. Anyway, good afternoon. Good to see everybody. I was mistaken earlier because I was here early at 1:30, and I was telling my friend Anna, I don't think we will have a full house today, because I have not seen any floating solar project in the Philippines for the past 3 years. But I am mistaken. And now we are full house, and I'm sure everybody's waiting for the ERC to announce the final gear price for floating solar in the auction to be conducted by the Department of Energy. I see some smiling faces hoping for a high price, right? But let's see, but we're waiting for that. Anyway, welcome to the future floating PV and BESS in Asia. And thanks to the Norwegian Embassy, Norwegian Energy Partners, the Embassy of Sweden, and Fornybar Norge. Thank you for participating today and for your attendance. We have a full house. And definitely we have not just full house, but a full schedule, with distinguished VIPs and speakers. We know a lot of them. We know most of them. And we hope to listen to what they will say. But definitely everyone's looking forward to the first floating solar project in the Philippines. We have been asking for this for the last few years. To start off and give his opening remarks, I'd like now to call to the stage His Excellency, the Ambassador of Norway, Christian Lister.
So good Monday afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to see a full house here this year as well. So welcome to the first day, or maybe day 0, of the Asia Clean Energy Forum, and to our session here today on floating solar energy and battery energy storage system, BESS. This session is, as my dear friend, the attorney said, organized by the Norwegian and Swedish embassies in Manila in partnership with Norwegian Energy Partners, Norway, and Renewables Norway. So, as we confront the dual challenges of climate change and land scarcity, it's clear that innovative energy solutions are more critical than ever. Floating solar photovoltaic FPV technology offers compelling, sustainable alternatives. With low carbon footprint and minimal land use, FPV is emerging as a key enabler of a zero emission future. So, by utilizing existing water bodies for solar installations, FPV reduces the environmental impact typically associated with ground-mounted systems, while also benefiting from natural cooling effect of water, which enhances efficiency. Meanwhile, BESS plays a pivotal role not only in supporting solar energy, but in advancing the broader integration of renewable energy. BESS addresses the intermittency of solar power, improves grid stability, and ensures greater reliability. It also enhances the financial viability of clean energy projects by enabling energy optimization and allowing stored electricity to be sold during peak demand periods. Norwegian and Scandinavian companies and institutions are already recognized as innovative leaders in both FPV and BESS. With decades of expertise in the maritime, offshore, and energy industries, Norway is particularly well positioned to drive technological progress in floating solar. Norwegian companies are actively engaged in pilot and large-scale projects worldwide, drawing on deep experience in offshore construction, including fish farms and other marine installations, skills that are directly transferable to FPV development. In today's session, you will hear from Norwegian companies and organizations showcasing cutting-edge innovations, alongside experts, insights from Asian Development Bank, ADB, on how FPV and BESS can accelerate clean energy investments across the region. It's a pleasure to welcome leading Norwegian entities such as Pixie, Fred Olsen, 1848, DNV, and Norfund, as well as Snap, SN Aboitiz Power, a joint venture between Scatec of Norway and the Aboitiz Group, as they shared their technologies, experiences, and visions for the future. So finally, thank you all for your presence here today and active participation. Let's make this a productive and inspiring session and continue to work together to advance the clean energy transition. Thank you so much.
Thank you. To give her opening remarks, we'd like to call in Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Sweden, Anna Ferry.
Good afternoon, everyone. What a pleasure to see you all gathered here today. I'm really looking forward to this afternoon and to hear the different presentations, but also the pertinent questions that you may have to all the experts in the room and also to the companies that are invited. And thank you also to my colleagues in the Norwegian Embassy that have made such a great effort to organize this event together with us. I will not repeat what my dear colleague Christian has said, but I just would like to add that, as you all know, we really need to make an effort to lower the CO2 emissions. And of course, the green transition is not only a necessity, but it's also smart. I think that we all need to diversify, all countries need to diversify the sources of energy, and we should also improve energy efficiency, of course. And I think that, as Christian said, that in our countries, we really have fantastic, a lot of R&D that has been invested into developing new technologies and knowledge that we can share with other countries. And companies that are here present today are happy to do so. Sweden has a goal to become, it's a legally binding goal actually, to become net zero carbon free economy by 2045. So we are really working hard into making this a reality. And we have close to almost 100% fossil-free electricity production, based mainly on hydro, nuclear, and growingly also wind. So these are some of the experience that we would like to put here forward to the table. And in terms of expertise, it's really the sustainable power generation that we can share, and also the smart grid technology. And we have one company here today, and Hitachi Energy, and you know all that Hitachi is Japanese, but actually Hitachi Energy bought ABB Power Grid. And Hitachi Energy has a very big center of excellence for R&D in Sweden and also manufacturing. So we are happy to share all this knowledge and expertise, and we are really looking forward to this afternoon, and we hope to support all the efforts to collaborate going forward. Many thanks.
All right, let's go to the heart of the schedule for today to discuss ADB's floating solar PV and BESS initiatives. The Director of Emerging Areas Energy Sector Office of the Asian Development Bank, Ms. Cindy Tiangco.
Thank you so much, Jay. Good afternoon, everyone, Excellencies, ambassadors. And thank you for this opportunity to talk to you today. This is my fourth of such floating PV sessions organized by the Norwegian Embassy. And now we have Sweden as well joining in the organizing this event. So you can see, I'm wearing a Bula shirt where excitement for floating PV in the Pacific is already growing. I just came from a Pacific session where we have all the power utilities in place and are really looking forward to having more floating PV in their region. So I'm excited to talk about that. So, but before anything else, let me just say a few words about what the ADB is doing you know, in the last couple of years. So ADB did a review of our ADB strategy 2030 and also our energy policy. And there has been some shift. One of them is the creation of the emerging areas teams, where we essentially focus on frontier and innovative approaches, also in financing and technologies and solutions. And this is where we come from. We have a focus, particularly for pillar or principle 2 and 5 of our energy policy, where we focus on building a sustainable and resilient energy future, but also integrated cross-sector operations to maximize development impact. So that is where our team is coming from. And of course, we need to be able to embody the 4 shifts under ADB's new operating model, which are solutions shift, climate change shift, private sector development shift, and new ways of working. So all of our initiatives will embody those 4 shifts. So as I mentioned, we focus on frontier technologies, and one of them is ocean and marine renewables. And here is, I'm just showing a graph of what we call technology readiness levels of ocean and marine renewables, including floating solar, of course, marine floating solar in particular, because freshwater floating PV is already quite commercial. And we believe, of course, that tripling renewable energy by 2050 and doubling energy efficiency will not be met by land-based technologies alone. Therefore, we need to go to the oceans. And that's why we have a focus on the Pacific. A large 15% of the globe is the Pacific Ocean. So, and of course, we have land-based PV as well on freshwater lakes, huge potential in various areas of the region, particularly Central Asia, which I will focus a little bit also in a few. Okay, so if you see, marine floating solar is TRL from about 5 to 8, but freshwater would be already 9. The other shift that we wanted to focus on is what we call integrated solutions, because energy is cross-cutting. All infrastructure needs energy, and all economic growth is fueled by energy. And this is why we need to focus on the sectors beyond energy that are going to be benefiting from productive uses of that energy that is generated. So one of the challenges that we have been looking to resolve is how to achieve climate change adaptation by deploying smart, low carbon integrated multi-sectoral solutions and approaches. We can no longer work in silos because each economic sector will actually be affected by climate change and other impacts and other negative impacts that we have in the environment currently. Okay, so this is what it would look like, and what a smart low carbon integrated solution will be in an island country, for example. So we have there a floating PV system, and that is producing power not only to provide electricity to households and others, but also to provide charging infrastructure for electric vehicles, for example. It will also provide additional power to all of the other sectors like health, education, and in particular, we're also looking at disaster risk reduction. And part of the systems that we are looking at are early warning systems and disaster risk reduction in many of these island countries. And one of the features here is that we have an electric reef as a first line of defense for a floating PV system and the coast. So I'm not sure if you've heard about electric reefs. So these are essentially metallic structures powered by current that will encourage coral growth. So you're actually regenerating the reef as part of not only protecting the coast, but the floating PV system as well. So the second line of defense is what we call wave breakers. So these could be geotubes, or this could be floating wave breakers to also protect the floating PV system. And this is particularly important for small island developing states that are battered by cyclones and natural disasters all the time. I think 18 cyclones a year, right, Grace? Yes, so this is really a very important solution where we have a more comprehensive approach to dealing with the impacts of climate change to our island countries. We have similar such images like this for one that's focusing particularly on water and urban communities. We also have one that focuses on how do we decarbonize the transport sector. You will see that on June 5, we have a session at 2 p.m. Please do attend that. Thank you. So this is it in action. So Kiribati and Tuvalu is now pioneering floating PV plus productive uses in the Pacific. And this is also where we are enabling standardization as well as aggregation so that you get the economies of scale. And because these are tiny, tiny countries, 5 megawatts will be like utility scale for them. So if we develop one 5 megawatt floating PV system, it's not going to be attractive to the large contractors. I mean, I spoke at the very first such session we had with SNAP and also with Ocean Sun at that time. So they said minimum 3 megawatts for them to be able to be interested even. So, but 1 megawatt, for example, in Tuvalu is already utility scale. So what we did was to put these two packages together, Kiribati and Tuvalu, 5 megawatt and 1 megawatt floating PV, plus all the productive uses So that actually increases the scale. So the regional procurement now is 30 million as opposed to just 5 million if we were doing Tuvalu alone. So that's the beauty of doing not only regional procurement or aggregation and integrated solutions, but to get the economies of scale. And we attract, of course, those that are major players in the industry. So I think this is what you wanted to know. And what is in store for floating PV of course, this is not an exhaustive list. So I mentioned Tuvalu Kiribati already there, particularly for nearshore marine. And we have a private sector-led 47 megawatt project that was deployed in Vietnam. That was the very first one on freshwater done by ADB in 2018. But we developed pilot projects in Azerbaijan and the Kyrgyz Republic starting then as well. So you'll see the photos, the middle photos, sorry. So the last two photos of the Azerbaijan pilot and the Kyrgyz Republic pilots were taken just 3 weeks ago. I was there to see my babies growing up. And so they essentially now operational and looking to scale. The 100 kilowatt peak pilot is going to be scaled up to 100 megawatts on Lake Boyokshor in Azerbaijan, funded by private sector. The Kyrgyz Republic, on the other hand, is going to be scaled up to 40 megawatts to be financed by ADB private sector, sorry, sovereign and non-sovereign. So that's how exciting it is becoming for floating PV, not only in the Pacific, but in Asia, whole of Asia. And you will see also a lot more. Attorney Jay talked about the Philippines. So there's a lot of potential there, particularly, well, Laguna Lake is already there with, I think, 15 gigawatts of potential, and hopefully we'll see them deployed soon. That, of course, there's also interest on floating PV and irrigation reservoirs. And that is also quite attractive and of interest to other Central Asian countries, particularly Tajikistan. So that's where we're going next. And of course, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. So potential 35 gigawatts, so unbelievable, with about 777 megawatts coming online in the next 4 years. Now we go to BESS. Essentially, BESS is normally, particularly for our operations in the Pacific, they're normally integrated with the energy generation capacity. So they don't go standalone BESS, but in many other places, we actually do finance BESS standalone to support reliability of the systems when renewable energy integration is already quite unstable, becoming unstable for the grid. So you can see the figures there. You can talk to us. I mean, I have my colleague here, Atsumasa Sakai, who's leading on the BESS. And what would be important to also know is that we have been partnering with the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, or GEAP, and they have a big push for BESS and distributed renewable energy. So those are the two main platforms for GEAP's agenda. We are partnering with them on an Enable platform, which is intended to become a space for international financiers to bring together the resources and catalyze the BESS market in the region. We are starting with Cambodia, Mongolia, Vietnam. This has just started. So in the next couple of months, we will be doing some reconnaissance missions to these countries. Up to 200 million in terms of the BESS pipeline in the next 3 years. And of course, you can see all the details in this slide. Of course, countries have different levels of readiness as well in terms of deploying BESS, especially at scale. And so that's why we focused on those 3 countries in particular, because we do have a very huge renewable energy initiative in these countries as well. So that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cindy. you got ahead of my question. I still don't see the Philippines in your list of projects, no? And maybe some best projects in Spain, perhaps in the future. Yes. All right. Our next, only one person left. Okay, next presenter to discuss known failures and risk mitigation in floating solar. She is the Business Development Manager of Energy Systems for DNV, Ms. Irene Imperial.
Yes, so good afternoon, everyone. I am Maxine Imperial from DNV, and I want to address a topic that everyone dreads: project mishaps. While mistakes are inevitable, it can always be a valuable learning experiences for everyone, especially in our field where prices of these lessons can be steep. So therefore, it is crucial for us to learn from our previous failures in order for us to prevent this from occurring again. So here is a brief overview of my presentation. We will begin by examining real life conditions of significant failures, issues that can delay or even halt a project entirely. Second, I will be discussing ways on how we can prevent this. We will explore intelligent design choices and engineering solutions that can mitigate risk from the outset. Because we will cover a range of challenges from waves and wind to mooring and simulation, and identify practical steps to manage them effectively. So let's begin by learning from these failures. Let's check some of the failures a lot of developers have encountered in floating PV systems over recent years. So these issues are real issues from actual projects, highlighting the critical importance of proper design and planning. Because poorly designed systems can lead to serious consequences: damaged equipment, safety hazards, and probably expensive downtime. So understanding these failures is essential to prevent this in future projects. Now let's review some examples and let's try to understand what went wrong and what lessons we can learn. So here are two real-world examples of issues that arise when floating solar systems aren't designed to withstand actual conditions. In both instances, the wind was stronger than anticipated. So the uneven shape of the floating platform caused an imbalance in the tension on the mooring lines. So it made the system fold up or even potentially catching fire. So these failures underscore the importance of designing for real world conditions rather than relying solely on theoretical expectations. Because even a minor design oversight can result in major disaster. So let's look at some real life issues with floating solar systems. First, temporary anchors failed to withstand an unexpected high wind. So it caused the floats to drift and run aground, causing or leading to delays and extra cost. Second, an unexpected drop in water level caused the system to rest on the ground, damaging anchors, floats, panels, or cables. This is due to insufficient knowledge in the water level changes. So both examples emphasize the need for planning for real world conditions.
the project is in TP. One of the things that we do for energy storage is in terms of safety, we provide safety investigation or fire safety investigations for any fire incidents, as well as fire testing. We provide or conduct create procedures for these OEMs and before they conduct this large-scale fire testing. This is just a highlight of our team in the APAC region. Move the next slide. So on my upcoming presentation will be part of the work stream for our bankability review that we've done for the past few years. So basically, what is bankability study or bankability review? It's an independent assessment of important technical parameters that every manufacturer claim to be. Now, a part of the technology bankability review is actually the review of product certifications. So these product certifications mainly are acquired by these OEMs at the minimum as a minimum requirements. Now, what we usually do or part of our report are divided in these parts, mainly company evaluation, manufacturing inspection and evaluation, technology evaluation, reliability and regulatory compliance evaluation, as well as the warranty product, what are the warranty products, standard warranty products, and the guaranteed um, guarantees that these OEMs offer to either to the each projects. So as a part of the company review, we also review the company product history, which means that we evaluate the history of the past models or past values of the energy storage product they have provided before, and what are the innovations, what were the changes on their current energy storage product. We, as well as for the financials and sales, we review the usually the past three years of their financial statement to have an overview of the financial health in terms of revenue and growth for the past 3 years. On the intellectual property review, we review their engagement, their involvement on coming up with international standards and norms, as well as the application of the software on the, and as well as the technical patents. With regards to the manufacturing evaluation, we as well review all other established systems like the quality management system, their supply chain management system, their inspection forms, all these things that is done on the manufacturing plant. We also conduct the review on site, inspection on every assembly points. We make sure that there are control points, all the data are traceable across the assembly points and the whole assembly area. Well, so big bulk of the technical evaluation is on the technical evaluation, which involves the review all of the technical aspects of the energy storage from cell to the battery system level, which we confirm through from their roll test data, and to make sure that all the declared technical parameters are what are or are aligned with the test data, with all the reports submitted, and all the audit files as well. So there are a lot of things that usually reviewed in the technical, like the degradation profile, the life cycles, how many, what are the design considerations in designing the battery cell, the battery racks, even up to the cell level voltage and current as well. In terms of reliability and regulatory and field of evaluation, we focus our efforts especially on the safety side. So we make sure that at minimum, of course, the standards and international standards are complied, specifically for regions, or there are specific requirements in terms of fire safety on every area or every region. That's what we focus on technically. So we review also their FIMEA or HMA, all these things with relation to the risk mitigations that they have on site and on their battery projects consideration. And in the warranty product support, we review also the standard warranty, product warranty terms, extended warranty terms, as well as the conditions, if this is aligned with the, the standards and norms globally. And in addition, we also review their guarantee performance warranty as well. When is it aligned with the expectation from these developers or these financing groups? The product manuals and operation maintenance manuals are just add-ons on this part of review. One of the key things as well for this is we make sure that the location of the service centers, we evaluate this as well. So they have the regional service levels and they have their local, and the capability of their regional and local organization is acceptable. Well, we have reviewed a lot of, or we have worked with different OEMs, or battery OEMs and integrators, as well as developers and banks, financing groups, that we, well, this was just a list of some of our partners or that we have collaborated for the past few years. So mainly these OEMs are coming from China, which the bank independent evaluation is required mainly from the US and Canada market. But we have seen the growth of these requirements from other regions like Australia and Europe. Before I end my presentation, whether you are a buyer or supplier, the whole market grows faster with the transparency and confidence in the products. So make sure that DNV is a trusted voice provider that collaborate with the whole value chain of the energy system. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. We'll ask questions later on. Our next speaker to discuss the case of Magat Dam, floating solar PV and BESS, the very first pilot project, albeit 200 kilowatt pilot project. The Vice President and Chief Business Development Officer of SN Aboitiz Power Group. Please welcome Mr. Jason Soberano.
Okay. His Excellency, Christian Lister, Her Excellency Anna Ferry. Good afternoon, friends and colleagues from the industry. Good afternoon. Okay, so I will be talking about the case of Magat Dam, which is a hydro and BESS and a floating PV installation, which is the first renewable energy installation here in the Philippines where you would see 3 utility scale technologies. But first of all, let me introduce who SNAP or SN Aboitiz Power is. So SNAP is a joint venture between Scatec of Norway. Scatec is a publicly listed company in Norway, and they own and operate solar, wind, and hydropower plants all over the world. Then the other shareholder is Aboitiz Power, which is one of the largest conglomerates in the Philippines. And this is their holding company for their power generation assets. So SNAP operates independently of its shareholders. We get the best bits of best practices from our shareholders and try to forge our own identity. We've been here in the Philippines since 2007. And we have around 673 megawatts of renewable energy. You would see the first box and the fourth and the fifth boxes are actually big hydropower plants in the Philippines, namely Magat in Isabela and Ifugao, 388 megawatts, Ambuklao and Binga. So these are big plants which were privatized by the government back in 2007 and 2008 and subsequently upgraded by SNAP. In 2017, we completed Maris Hydro, which is 8.5 megawatts. This is a run-of-river installation, and this is under the feed-in tariff program of the Department of Energy in the Philippines. In 2024, in January of 2024, the Magat BESS, this is the 24 megawatts and 32 megawatt hour installation co-located in Magat, started commercially operating. It was completed mechanically in 2023. We started construction in 2022. It's co-located with Magat. If you look at the upper right picture, you would see the dam on the background. The dam was constructed back in 1982. And the first phase of Magat BESS, 24 megawatts, was completed in 2023. It started delivering ancillary services and energy to the grid in January of 2024 via the reserves market. And we believe that this is actually the first step of SNAP in managing intermittency of variable RE. As we know, storage is really a very important aspect of increasing RE penetration in the country. So let me share with you some best practices of implementing BESS projects here in the Philippines, and also learnings and challenges, among other things. So we utilized liquid cooling lithium iron phosphate batteries, or LFP, to achieve higher energy density. We do understand that there are different types of technologies in the market now. We believe LFP right now is the most stable. And liquid cooling is very important in the Philippines given the harsh weather conditions here. For those of you who travel infrequently to the Philippines, I'm pretty sure it's very hot here, right? So sometimes it's very humid as well, and it's not unusual to hear thermal runaways happening for BESS systems. We also completed the feasibility study to determine optimal sizing of the BESS and its applications for utility scale. We enlisted the help of DNV, our friends, and they did a really good job in doing the feasibility study. We collaborated with key stakeholders. We took care of our local government units via supporting and creating jobs locally and applying for the relevant permits. And of course, compliance with international design and safety standards of energy storage systems. Some of the challenges experienced, unexpected delays in customs clearance. When we executed this particular project, this was a relatively new technology in the Philippines. There were some items that got hold up in the customs. For example, are as trivial as a UPS battery. So it required clearance from the Optical Media Board of the Philippines. So it contributed to delays in the project. We also waited for the implementation of the reserve market here in the Philippines before we were able to commercially operate. So we completed, I think, we were 6 months early, and we waited for the reserves market to come in. And one of the biggest, I would say, uncertain things during that time was really grid testing and commissioning with NGCP, the grid operator. During that time, BESS was a relatively new technology, and the grid operator themselves were still refining the testing criteria. Right? So there were testing criteria that kept on moving, and when they changed the testing criteria, we can't really schedule a testing slot immediately after that. So we had to wait a month or two. Right? So the expectation now is that as we move forward and as NGCP firms up its testing criteria, all of these testing and commissioning timelines would be quicker. Okay, so I said earlier phase 1, right? Because there's actually phase 2 and it's under construction. You would see His Excellency doing the groundbreaking. He did the groundbreaking for phase 2. He also did the groundbreaking for being a BESS a few months ago. So both of these projects are currently ongoing with the support of our friends from Hitachi as well. And Hitachi is sort of complaining to me because I'm always asking them to accelerate project execution, right? So, but it's part of, it's part of the job, right? So we are targeting 80 megawatts by 2026. So the first 24 plus the 16 currently ongoing, and the other 40 megawatts currently ongoing as well. And more BESS projects coming in by 2027. I would rather not say how much, but we are actually tendering around 3 more projects this year. So for us, this is really part of who we are by reinforcing energy transition, putting in BESS, not just standalone BESSes, but moving forward, we would be also doing integrated BESSes with solar plants. Okay, now moving on to our experience with floating solar. So you would see the 200 kilowatt pilot. This was completed back in July of 2019. It started operations in July 2019. And it was, emphasis on was, it was the largest pilot in the Philippines, right? Up until a few months back, because we had to decommission the system because of some technical challenges. I would rather not go into the details, but suffice to say that I'd like to emphasize what was mentioned earlier by DNV, that the importance of having detailed engineering design and site-specific data before coming in and executing floating solar in the Philippine context is very important. As you know, the weather in the Philippines can be very punishing, right? So we get pummeled by 20-21 typhoons in a year. Historically, the strongest typhoon in recorded history actually passed through the Philippines. So that's what we have to deal with. And my personal view is that technical solutions are actually what is hindering, right, the growth of floating solar in the Philippines. If you recall, the government actually put already the first piece of the puzzle. They've put in the green energy auction. So the market is already there for floating solar for 2027, 2028, and 2029. So the market is there. It's now up to us, the developers, the technology providers, and the financing institutions to really take advantage of that market. So just some key milestones related to that. It started in June 2019. Currently, feasibility study is ongoing, and we target to start construction because we're actually gunning for the Green Energy Auction Program, phase 1 in 2026. Just to show you an overview of the Magat Dam and how big it is, we have a service contract of around 1,341 hectares. And we have a potential, realistic potential. And when I say realistic, this considers fisher folks, this considers setbacks, and this considers detailed designs of around 108 megawatts. And major components include PV modules, floats, mooring lines. One of the key things here, one of the key challenges is water level variation. And this being a dam, variations of water level of around 30 meters is not unusual. So think about water level variations of 10 floors. One floor is around 3 meters, right? So you would typically see water level variations of 30 meters. We continue to do stakeholder engagement to enable floating solar, and not just floating solar, but all our other projects. For floating solar specifically, we continue to speak with the National Irrigation Administration for the grant of the possessory rights on the surface of the Magat Reservoir. Also, we continue to speak with the NCIP for the CNO, Certificate of Non-Overlap of the project, which we have already acquired. One of the things, though, that is a problem for floating solar developers in the Philippines is the ECC, or the Environmental Compliance Certificate. As we understand it, the DNR has imposed a moratorium, or the Department of Energy, Environment and Natural Resources has imposed a moratorium on ECC acquisitions and ECC grants to floating solar projects. So you see the first piece of the puzzle, as I mentioned earlier, the market is already there. But some of the permits, the framework for the permits, there are still gaps. And my hope is that as the government moves and supports floating solar as a technology, all the other government agencies would follow suit. One of the major challenges, right, as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, one of the major challenges is the weather conditions in the Philippines. 2021 typhoons, 250 km/h wind gusts. Those are really very tough for any floating solar installation. CapEx cost is differentiated. The government has taken positive steps to differentiate ground-mounted solar versus floating solar. Insurability continues to be a challenge. As we go out to the market and try to develop floating solar, we're seeing insurability, insurance costs of around double or triple compared to ground-mounted solar. And of course, technology and testing standards are also, there's no particular standard that are set in stone. So that's something that needs to be developed as well. So moving forward, what's more for SN Aboitiz Power? As I mentioned earlier, there's going to be more BESS projects this 2027, both from a standalone basis to compete in the reserves market and also as integrated renewable energy plants. We're also developing ground-mounted solar, and we're planning to integrate renewable energy and battery storage. We're scaling up Magat FPV this 2026 to make a run for the Green Energy Auction Program. We're speaking with different technology providers and consultants to help us get there. And hopefully we see a creation of new energy solutions of hydro, FPV, and storage. My vision is that we do this in Magat, hydro, big FPVs, utility scale, big batteries, and we're going to replicate it in our other sites in Ambuklao and Binga. And that's what we plan to do in the next 2 to 3 years. So that ends my presentation. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. I was surprised with customs holding up your batteries. No? How long was that, Jason? How long was the delay? 1 month. All right. It would not have been a problem if your customs commissioner back then was my good friend and fellow Cornell alumnus Sunny Sevilla over here. Sunny, maybe a round of applause for Sunny. He's very low key, but actually he was the customs commissioner. So next time, Jason will take note of that. All right. And I guess for ECC purposes, Jason, it would not be a problem anymore because Secretary Popo Lutila has been transferred to DNR, right? I can see that the energy folks are so sad with Popo leaving, but the DNR folks are so happy that he's going there. Huh? It's their gain. All right. Our next speaker, we're running out of time, but anyway, we have a few minutes for Q&A later. To discuss floating solar PV in dynamic environments, the commercial manager, Fred Olsen, in fact, the first holder of the Open Sea service contract in the Philippines, Mr. Martinius Hars.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. So I will talk about floating solar, a little bit on the markets to begin with, and then I'll go into our technology, give you an introduction to it, and then the latest developments we had the last few years. And then at the end, we have a new solution for anchor mooring in hydro dams, which we'd like to present to you as well. So, but first, just a quick introduction to our company. So, we were established back in 1848, family business, traditionally in shipping. So, but after spending more than 100 years in shipping, we went into oil and gas, but also in the maritime side. So, building and operating drilling rigs, FPSOs, and tankers. But from the mid-90s, Fred wanted to change his company into renewable energy and starting with building onshore wind farms. And since then, we have basically built up companies within the whole value chain of the wind industry. And I myself, with my colleagues here, we represent Fred. Olsen 1848, which is the R&D part of the ecosystem. So when we talk about floating PV, we like to divide it into 3 segments. So we have the inland water body, was mentioned earlier, it's quite mature, still maybe not very, or still not kind of finalized, but it's quite mature, more than 10 years of experience, gigawatts installed, established developers and technology providers. And then on the other hand, we have offshore floating solar, which has been a hype in Europe, where they see looking at co-locating them with offshore wind. This is still quite experimental and costly in our opinion. So what we are doing, we are trying to target this, what we call nearshore, but we also like to include large lakes like Laguna Lake and hydro dams into this segment. And the reason for that is that once you have a water body with a long fetch and wind speeds, you will generate waves. So just a illustrative example on your right here. So if you have a 40 meter per second wind and a 1 kilometer fetch, that will actually generate a wave as tall as a person. And if the fetch increases to 4 kilometers, it will be as tall as an elephant. And after 8 kilometers, it will be as tall as a giraffe with peak waves of 6 meters. So if you put this calculations into Laguna Lake, you see Laguna Lake has quite some big waves, and that's also been there's been some analysis by DNV, for example, showing these, and that's where we come in. So BRIZO is designed and tested to withstand wave heights up to 3.5 meter HS, that's 7 meter peak waves, without the need of any wave breakers. So our system is basically an advanced mooring system. So it's a pre-tension rope mesh where we anchor each individual module and floater into this rope mesh. And this allows the modules to move freely and independently. And this is key for handling the bigger waves. And the main difference between our system and the ones you've seen previously is that we are not trying to transfer loads from one floater to the next one. The loads will be transferred to the nearby ropes and then down to the mooring system. O&M is also currently being done by manual labor, and you have installed floating walkways for people to walk on. So, but we have designed an integrated solution with floating access to all parts of the system. So this catamaran can be used for component exchange or cleaning in a very safe and efficient manner. So currently it's manually operated, but we're looking to make it autonomous in the future. And all parts of the all components of the system is based on tradition or very established supply chain. So it's injection and blow molding. Everything is basically HDPE. So to the latest update. So we invented the system back in 2021 when we were looking at Manila Bay actually. And we couldn't find a solution that fit the environments there, so that's why we actually designed this system. So, but since then we have done 2 pilots, we have had 2 tank tests, and we have had some significant cost reductions. So we have what we call a floating laboratory in Norway, in salt water. And last year we replaced all the floaters with a new design, testing various cable management solutions. We also built and tested the O&M catamaran, both for components exchange and cleaning. We have also installed and designed a very extensive instrumentation package and was also grid connected. On the design side, we have also made quite a few changes. So firstly, we have reduced the number of components. We have also made it more, or improved the energy density. And we also made a new floater design for lower peak waves. So we set a maximum 2 meter HS for the cheaper floater, and then the 3.5 to 4 meter HS for the kind of main floater. In February this year, we spent 2 weeks testing the system in a wave basin in Trondheim, Norway. So that was a 3 megawatt building block in a 1 to 10 scale. So the model itself was 25 meter long. And we tested it in all different wave periods from 1 to 3.5 meter HS. And I have a video showing how it operates in 2 meter HS. So as you can see, it moves like a carpet, more or less, on the water, without any kind of, yeah. So we were very happy with the results. We didn't have any breakage, even at the extreme stream loads, and it behaves as expected. So these numbers now are being used for our anchor mooring analysis together with CFD analysis on wind. So we're combining those 2 tests to do our anchor mooring analysis, and it's being verified by DNV. And then lastly, to one of the concerns on floating PV on hydro dams, which was mentioned earlier, so namely how you cope with high water level variation. So I'm designing a new system, and I would like to show you a video of how it works.
The tension buoy, an automatic tension buoy solution for floating solar systems, suitable for areas with large water variations. The automatic tension buoy is a cost-efficient mooring solution for floating solar systems on hydro dams. Hydro dams are ideal for floating solar solutions since they are already connected to the grid and are equipped with the necessary infrastructure needed for power production. However, the challenge lies in the significant fluctuations in water levels of hydro dams. The automatic tension buoy system can maintain a constant system position by adjusting the mooring line length according to water levels. The automatic tension buoy stands out as the first solution to address this issue, specially for floating PV, combining smart functionality with cost effectiveness not found in other floating PV solutions on the market. It operates with a winch mounted on the buoy, which adjusts the mooring line, maintaining the preferable anchor line tension. The winch receives an automatic signal indicating how much the mooring line needs to adjust to maintain proper tensioning based on the current water level. The chain runs smoothly from the mooring through the roller in the bottom of the buoy, then through the center hole, up to the gypsy wheel on the winch, then returning down through the center hole. Excess chain hangs freely in the water column below the tension buoy. An easily scalable solution tailored for areas with large water level variations, designed for Brizo, but also compatible with other floating systems on the market. The automatic tension buoy is unlocking the potential for floating solar in hydro dams.
Yes, so this solution is we have actually made 4 of them now. We have also made the software. So it's will be installed in a hydro dam in Europe in just a few months' time. So it'll be very interesting to see if it works as well as on the video. So hopefully. So if you found this interesting and want to chat with us, you can either find me or my colleagues here in the break. And that's it for me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Martin, for that. Our next speaker to discuss unlocking the full potential of battery energy storage, the Business Development Manager of Pixie, Mr. Jazz Moran.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. Okay, so let me just give a quick introduction about myself and about the company that I'm with, and then I'll move on to talk more about what the BESS is about and what Pixie can do as a BESS, position themselves as a BESS company. So myself, I'm from Singapore. Pixie, we are a Norwegian company. We established in 2018, so we have just recently gotten our footprint here in Asia in 2023. So some of you here may have heard of Enatech. So basically Enatech and Pixie, we are like sisters company, and we have partnered together in Southeast Asia to broaden the business in respects to renewable energy and the BESS. So over here we have our Pixie HQ in Norway, and we have a head office here in Singapore, and we also have a subsidiary office here in Philippines as well. This is our footprint and our offices across the globe. Okay, so the next slide, I will actually touch a little bit deeper on the grid in the Philippines, and I'll touch more about how is it in Southeast Asia. Okay, so basically in the Philippines, you know, from just to get some context, it's my first time in Philippines actually. So I've done my own research on how BESS can actually supplement or at least Philippines can benefit with using BESS. So you know, having said that, the Philippines experience a lot of natural disasters, unfortunately. So it's things like the typhoons and the earthquakes. So when we speak about all this, we also look at things that what are the markets that cannot afford any downtime. So the top two, definitely data centers, hospital. They run on very high power capacity at very constant rate, and they cannot afford any downtime. So if the grid fails, then there is no power. This is where the BESS comes into the play, to not only provide power as a backup, but also to provide power as a voltage support. So if you realize, you know, as I go on, I'll talk a little bit more technical. Pardon me for that. Okay. So also having said that, energy storage systems are not only typically about batteries or backup power or peak shaving. It has to be seen as something like a tool that you can also utilize to make money, to get a ROI, to get a profit. So I'll touch a little bit on all of this. So you know, that's pretty much where energy storage steps in. So the BESS that we are using, you know, in Pixie, we are using lithium-ion batteries. People may be speaking about sodium-ion, but we think that LFP, lithium-ion batteries, are constantly still evolving, you know, and it benefits a lot of markets in terms of commercially, even talking about the size. So if some customers, you know, like from where I come from in Singapore, it's a very small landscape. So we constantly worry about space. We don't have space available. So, you know, I think quite popular to actually have a energy storage system that is very compact. And not only that, is that, you know, for Pixie, we are able to install our energy storage on a pole. So this actually saves you a lot of space. Okay, so with energy storage systems and with Pixie, so our goal is to actually to more or less like untangle the grid or distress the grid a little bit. So when we talk about a lot of consumption, whether it's in Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, the grid can only take so much. That's why we are introducing things like peak shaving to provide that extra power that the grid cannot provide. And then not only that, is that we also provide something that we like to call phase balancing. So a phase balancing normally applies to those rural areas. And if you look back to this previous slide, you can see the map of Philippines, that everything there's so many islands that makes up Philippines. So just looking at this, you can already know that in some parts of Philippines, the grid is not so stable. It needs the support. That's where, again, I stress, this is where the BESS comes in. So a phase balancing basically means that you're taking the stress off the grid for that location. For example, if you have a small town in a small island somewhere in Philippines, and you only have a transformer that can take so much. So if you have an energy storage system, then that is where we can take the stress off the transformer, support the grid stability, and to provide phase balancing. Phase balancing is basically if you're talking about three-phase voltage system, then it balances it more and you experience less blackout, less power breakdown. And even if it does from the grid, maybe because of a typhoon, you have the energy storage to serve as a backup. That way, you will have an additional, maybe 12 hours of energy, of power, still giving you the power and the lights you need. So pretty much, if we look on the right side, that is what the BESS can generally do in the market. And so basically what's very popular everywhere in the world is peak shaving. Again, if let's say the grid is giving only 100 watts to a factory, for example, and the factory is expanding and they are looking to have 50 more watts from the grid. So instead of calling up the grid and setting up a new substation, you can just implement BESS and we can actually give you that extra 50 watts that you need. Okay, so another thing that's also getting more and more popular is, of course, the electric vehicles. We see the trend from Elon Musk and Tesla and BYD with all the fancy cars. But then, when you buy all this, where are you going to charge? So that's where, of course, aside from having EV chargers, you have the batteries as well to provide that either a fast charging or the peak shaving that the grid cannot provide. So that is where we want to position ourselves. So it's what someone mentioned earlier, as a battery storage, we can't really be a standalone, but if we have partnerships and work together with solar players, power generators, then that's where we can actually supplement and benefit people in the market a lot more. The one on the left, when we talk about optimizing ROI, this is something that Pixie is very good at. So when we talk about optimizing ROI, we are talking about energy arbitrage, virtual power plant, VPP. So having all of this, you don't only think that energy storage is a regular battery. No, you think of it as a tool to make money. And not only to make money, I don't want to sound like a bad guy only making money, but also to stabilize the grid. That is how we want to position ourselves as a BESS provider. Okay. So this is actually a very famous duck curve. Duck because it looks like a duck, not really like a chicken, more like a duck. So you can see the timeline below the screen from 12 a.m. to 9 p.m. So you can see the belly of the duck between 9 to 6 p.m. That is where we are at work, like where we are right now. We are not home using our aircons, turning on our television. And only after coming home, the peak demands goes up. And that is where we want to utilize the BESS to actually store the power when the energy demand is low, and we discharge when there is a demand, which we like to call DR. DR meaning demand response. So when there is a DR, that's when the BESS will actually release the power. So actually in this graph here, it shows pretty much two things. One is, of course, meeting the demands. When the demand is high, okay, then the battery will discharge the power. Second one, when the power is high on demand, what else goes up? The price of the electricity goes up. That is where you practice energy arbitrage, selling power back to the grid, earning profit from there, getting energy at the belly of the duck when the energy prices are lower. This is pretty much at least for Pixie, this is the markets that we are targeting. What's getting more and more popular in Southeast Asia is actually CNI on the top right on the screen. commercial and industrial, meaning places like shopping malls, factories, especially in Malaysia. I believe some of you guys here are Malaysians, I can see. So TNB, the Power Grid of Malaysia, recently announced that they are bumping up the tariff by 14% immediately in July. So they are forcing people to go green. So that is an initiative from the government moving forward. And I think this is something that the neighboring countries will start to follow as well. So another thing also is we look at residential. If you have a home, you have a space, you have electric cars, and you want to implement the BESS, this is something Pixie can provide as well. A very sexy design, you can put it in your home, and it's at 20 kilowatts, meaning you can take the power from the solar. Either you want to sell it back to the grid if the grid allows it from residential, or to charge your electric vehicles. So either way, you are looking to actually save money using energy storage in your homes, okay? My favorite personally is the bottom left, which is the microgrid and the off-grid. I think this is something that Southeast Asia is slowly on the rise, especially in places like Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia as well. So in all of these grids, people will ask me, then Jess, when you have all these small islands broken up like Philippines and Indonesia, how do they get the power? They get the power from the generators, the gen set that's using diesel. But using diesel, you not only have to suffer the high prices of diesel, you suffer the high price of OPEX to maintain the generator. It's a complicated system that you don't have, it's not like $100 a month and then you can maintain the whole thing tip top. So that is where we want to position the energy storage system to support generators or to remove generators so that we can not only enjoy green energy, we can also promote stable power. Okay, so that has been the mission for myself and on Pixie as well. We want to push hard for renewable energy. We believe this is the future moving forward. If you want to speak with me, I'll be at the back somewhere. You can ask me questions later on. With that, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Jazz. For Filipinos out there, don't talk to him in Tagalog. I made that mistake earlier when I said, "Kamusta ka?" and he just smiled at me. No? He's Singaporean, actually, but he looks like us. Our next speaker to discuss BESS, the key to provide resilience for future grid, the Regional Sales and Marketing Manager of Hitachi Energy, Mr. Jan Jiangpu.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Ambassador Anna, Ambassador Christian. Thanks for this opportunity. It allows me to share some market insight with all of the audience here, and also in the meanwhile, that hopefully the presentation can give some insight to help to understand how Hitachi Energy and how the battery storage system can help Philippines to embark on this journey for the green energy transition. Nowadays, renewable is the key driver to reshape the modern grid. Many of the push coming from the renewable build-up nowadays actually brings a lot of challenging and also the trend across the global. We have observed there are more and more regional grids are interconnected together in order to be able to balance the demand supply, to diversify the power supply source, and also in the meanwhile, to be able to manage or mitigate the risk of the operation. In the meanwhile, we have seen that the large demand is centralized in the large city, but in the meanwhile, that we also need to ensure the accessibility of clean and reliable energy supply to the remote community as well. Thirdly, with the increasing penetration of renewable and also distributed energy resource, now the grid operations get more and more complex, which is called for a smart and digitalized solution. As shown in the slide here, traditionally, to ensure the secure and stable operation of the network, we need to provide all this kind of service, including we need to build in the inertia to the grid. We need to have the capability to inject the fault currents and ensure the system strength. Don't have to mention about the two elements of the actual service, which is function regulation and also the voltage regulation. You have all kinds of different solutions or components to provide each of this kind of service. Nowadays, with the battery storage system, with only one solution, right size of system, the right control automation piece, you have one solution to cover and provide all those kind of service. This is the value of the battery storage system. The battery doesn't generate any electron, right? By the end of the day, you still need to charge the battery. The value of the battery storage system is related to provide the flexibility to the network. The flexibility is critical because the renewable, the intermittency nature of the renewable. Yeah. The intermittency of a renewable actually restrict the scalability of the renewable size, with the concern that it might cause power quality issue and also the instability to the network, which lead to the limitation on how much penetration it can be present in the whole network. With the right control and the right capability of the power electronic component, the battery storage system can provide the flexibility which requires to release the full potential of the renewable and also to increase the penetration limits of the battery storage system. In the meanwhile, it also provided the improvement on the power quality and also provide the resilience to the network. This is a real project data to show you how the battery storage system can improve the power quality and also provide the great resilience. Before we introduce the BESS system into the network, the maximum function deviation can be up to 0.026 PU. And also, on daily basis, you have load shading. After we introduce the BESS system with the right automation piece, we can reduce the function regulation by 10 times to 0.002 of the power PU, and this no shading requires any more. In the meanwhile, the battery storage system can respond to the dispatch signal within 60 milliseconds. This the solution, this the right component of the power electronic with the primary control, secondary control, can improve the stability and also provide the resilience to the network. So the battery storage system actually probably a very hot topic in the past 5 to 10 years time. But actually for Hitachi Energy or the ex-ABB Power Grid business, we have been doing the battery storage system for more than 30 years. And in total, we have an install base of 7 GW worldwide with the project of 350 plus across the global. That's the expertise lies within the team. I would like to share two successful stories we have in this region and in Philippines as well, to give you a sense that how we can support Philippines to embark on the green transition journey there. Firstly is the SNAP project. This very famous one, and Jason had mentioned on that. So we do appreciate the opportunity, have the honor to support SNR Body's team to putting on this BESS system on the Maga side. This system consists of 24 megawatt, 32.5 megawatt hour battery storage system together with the full suite of the image control system coming from Hitachi Energy side. And it's a remarkable project because it has 3 different technologies you have the solar PV, you have a hydropower plant, and also you have the battery storage system all coming together, coexisting on the same site and provide the services to the grid. And also in the meanwhile, that's from our side, not only about to provide the solution, but also in the meanwhile that we also have a long-term service agreement to support SNAP team on the daily operation as well. Yeah. We are looking forward from our side to replicate the same success to many other power plant, hydropower plant in Philippines and also in the region as well. Well, large grid-scale system catch your eyes, but in the meanwhile, that we also need to pay attention and give the priority to the underserved, the remote community as well, especially given the geographical constraint in this region, especially like Philippines, Indonesia. We have 1,000 islands within the country. This is one of the very successful project we have done in Indonesia. It's one of the G20 Summit showcase project supported by the Indonesian government as well. I will not get into too much of detail. I will have a video to bring out all the information so you can have a look. Enjoy the video.
Nusa Penida is a small tropical island situated on the southeast from Bali, a tourist destination. It is a home for around 50,000 people. The government has chosen a microgrid project in Nusa Penida to showcase the country's commitment towards the energy transition during the G20 Summit in 2022. Operating on an area of 4.5 hectares, the microgrid project is managed by PT Indonesia Power, the power generation subsidiary of the nation's utility. As a global technology leader, Hitachi Energy has been selected to deploy the microgrid project working in consortium with Surya Energi Indotama. Our solutions incorporate solar PV, battery energy storage, and diesel, aiming to reduce 3,200 tons of carbon emissions annually. The microgrid has helped meet the 20% surge in electricity demand during the G20 Summit and will continue to support demand from local customers. The project is also part of PLN's de-dieselization program to reduce carbon fuel and accelerate the shift to greener energy. As Indonesia is moving towards carbon neutral, Hitachi Energy is the trusted partner to provide technology solutions for a sustainable energy future.
That ends my presentation. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I have a question later on during the panel because I saw that you built it around the mountain, right? Okay. All right. For our last speaker, before we go to a panel discussion, to discuss an introduction to Norfund's climate investment mandate, the Senior Vice President of Norfund, Mr. Anders Blom.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, good afternoon. So my name is Anders. I'm the last speaker today. So I'm here to just give a brief introduction about Norfund and our climate investment mandate, and specifically our experiences on storage and floating solar, and what we'd like to do more of. Creating jobs, improving lives, and supporting the transition to net zero. That's what Norfund's mandate and what our focus is. We are a Norwegian government-owned investment vehicle, roughly $4 billion of assets under management. We invest in developing and emerging markets across two main mandates. A development mandate, which has a focus on indirect job creation, and a climate mandate, which provides capital to net zero. We're spread across many parts of the world. We have 3 regional offices in Africa, 1 in Bangkok covering South and Southeast Asia, and 1 in Latin America. 130 plus people at the moment. And we use our capital and focus on creating additional impact with this capital. We invest as a firm across 4 main verticals: renewable energy. I'll get back to a little bit more, but just for context as well, we do focus on financial inclusion, commercial banks, microfinance, fintechs, scalable enterprises, mainly focused on African markets, where we invest in light manufacturing and agri-business, agri-value chain business, and then green infrastructure, which is an up-and-coming area for us that we'd like to do more also in this region in Asia, mainly on waste management and water. Like I said, we're a government-funded entity. We get to recycle our capital as well. So while we're only $4 billion, we have a yearly investment capacity that's now reached $700 million per year. This year, we're set to invest $1 billion across these verticals in new investments. So the yearly investment capacity is quite significant compared to our balance sheet. And this is what it looks like for the development mandate. You can see this is mostly focused on Africa across both equity and loans and across these main verticals. And then for this climate mandate, which is more relevant for this storage and floating solars, you can see that most of the capital to date, and we've been investing under this mandate for a good 2.5 years now, has been deployed in India and South Africa, parts of in Sri Lanka as well. We'd love to do more. We have 8 focus countries, a lot of them in Southeast Asia, Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia included, where we hope to do a whole lot more in this. Most of this is invested as equity, both in projects and platform levels as well. But we don't develop our own projects, we provide financing to developers as well. Across technologies, solar, wind, storage, and enabling technologies such as transmission, which we've actually invested the last couple of years in India as well. These are the main countries where we focus. Apart from these, we've also added Thailand and Malaysia in this region as well. So South and Southeast Asia, we do not. The first speaker here mentioned Asia Pacific. We're not in the Pacific yet, at least, nor in Central Asia. But hopefully, if we make success in these initial countries, we can expand this geographical scope as well. Just a quick, for those who don't know, is we have right now not many investments in the Philippines, but Norfund has been active in the Philippines for quite a long time. Through our investee that we exited in 2021 called SM Power, which is a Boitis Power partner in this 50-50 JV that Jason presented as well under SNAP as well. So SM Power and SNAP are examples of vehicles that we'd like to replicate as well, where our capital can provide further growth capital to new projects, take on risk as well, such as this initial pilot of the floating solar. I've mentioned here as well, so we have significant investment capacity. This is for Philippines, but across the region, I'd say $500 million in Southeast Asia next couple of years as a target that we'd like to employ for the correct projects. And lastly, I'll follow up with just a couple of examples of what we've done and what we'd like to replicate of. On floating solar, it's not that much experience, actually. This one on Magat Dam, which originally we were part of financing one level above through another investee in India. They've developed a couple on-site facilities on, you can see small reservoirs. These are only a megawatt as well, so these are not utility scale plants, but obviously has a great impact on the customer's electricity bill. Caveat, of course, this is a power-intensive customer here, so this only offsets or very little offset of what their total carbon emissions and power bills are. But it's a step forward. On the storage side, however, we have done a couple of projects that are worthwhile to note as well. So this is a project in South Africa that was developed by the Norwegian company that was mentioned earlier as well, Scotec, together with a local partner that we fund, H1 Holdings in this was, at the time at least, one of the largest solar hybrid solutions, solar storage hybrid solutions. It had 540 megawatts of PV capacity and about 225 megawatts and north of a gigawatt hours of storage capacity. The reason why it was designed this way was to meet certain tender requirements from the South African utility ESCOM, or the government through their program, to meet evening peak and firm demand on the evening peak. So there was minimum requirements of meeting firm capacity between the hours of 5 and 9 p.m. Late early evening as well. And this program was originally designed for gas projects, but it was actually feasible to do this under renewable with a lot of storage capacity as well. But of course, it's designed also to be able to deliver this firm capacity also on cloudy days as well, and hence the, let's call it the oversizing as well. Another project that's now being developed again, it's in South Africa, but an example of what we'd like to do more of is in the Red Sand storage project as well. It's a standalone storage project, again, set to design for a specific government tender as well. So standalone, 153 megawatts, 600 megawatt hours of storage capacity as well. That is now soon starting construction, maybe late 2025, early 26, to meet certain criteria as well. So apart from South Africa, we're doing similar projects under development that some of our partners are doing in India, and that we'd love to do more also in this region again, and provide this capital to developers as well. So lastly, we can provide the capital. Of course, we need to collaborate as well. We need credible developers. We need all the supporting suppliers and the governments and the regulators as well. We're here. We're happy to hear and talk about the projects and how we can make them a success. Thank you.
All right. May I ask all the speakers to come up to stage and join us for the Q&A? And I'm sure a lot of our audience members would also like to ask questions. So can we invite back to the stage Cindy? We have Maxine, Joey, Jason, Martin, Jazz, JJ, and Anders. All right. Klaus, we have 30 minutes for this. Yes, we can do it. All right. Seats. All right. Well, let me ask so that everyone can answer my question. You know, you're very familiar with the recent reorganization, no, by the current administration. While is only on an OIC basis, right? Assuming you are a Filipino citizen and you are appointed by the president to become the secretary of the Department of Energy, I'd like you to cite two things to make sure that floating solar on a massive scale can finally happen in the Philippines. So let's start with, perhaps let's start with the ladies. Cindy? So that the men can think some more, right? The ladies can think quickly. Cindy, what do you think? Can you?
Thank you. Yeah, so we're actually doing them now. So I was just at the DOE last Friday, and we talked about not only floating PV, but also tidal and other ocean and marine renewables. So we'll be helping them develop a roadmap of projects coming online, particularly around ocean and marine renewables. And of course, along with that will be some kind of investment planning. But before that, we need to do a lot of assessments, particularly and potentially deploying measurement stations to be able to really ascertain what it is on the water, not on the ground. Yes, thank you.
All right, so that's a roadmap for floating solar, right? We all know that the World Bank did the roadmap for offshore wind, but no roadmap yet for floating solar
It's floating and tidal.
and tidal. All right. And the second item you'd like to consider, Cindy, or we'll leave it at one item. You're good with that?
Well, that's road mapping and of course the investments down the line and helping them with capacity building. There's a lot of regulatory requirements still needed. So always all the three things, yeah, regulatory requirements as well as the investments.
All right. Thank you, Cindy. Maxine, while you have scared us earlier with your pictures of burnt floating solar projects, maybe if you become the secretary, what would be two things you will do quickly?
Okay. First and foremost, I was a previous DOE employer.
Oh, there you go. Okay. What
Can I-
year was that?
It was 2019 to 2023. I was
Okay.
with the Investment Promotion Office.
With the IPO. All right.
So can I be specific and concise, please?
Sure.
Yeah. Probably first is incentives for our developers. For sure, everyone wants to hear that. And secondly is actually um, second is uh, streamlining of the permits and approvals, especially for floating. We do not want, we are just as what the other speaker said, that floating is already in the market and we don't want the developers to have a hard time introducing or trying to get floating in the Philippines running.
Okay. So you want more incentives on top of the buffet of incentives already, right? Okay. Because you all know that if you are an RE developer, you get a service contract, you do not pay income tax for 7 years. And after that, you only pay 10% corporate income tax, right? So you want 0%, right? On top of the incentives. All right. Yes. I have more questions here. I'm not done with the boys, so but I'll thank you. How about let me see. Let's go down the line. Joey, what will you do? Two items as energy secretary.
Probably on the technical side, since it's on the regulated financial side, on what Irene or Maxine have mentioned. I think on the technical side, I'll go with Miss Cindy on the, I think on how I don't know if how this will be solution, but at top of my mind, how will be the developer and the government go hand in hand in doing this technical due diligence. We've seen how massive is Laguna Lake is. So I think the burden probably on the cost for the technical due diligence for the developers quite high. So I think the government works should be, or with the developers on the technical components should be considered on what are under those waters to be considered, since this is a challenge right now for the Laguna Lake.
Okay, Jason, you've had your challenges. No, I'm surprised with optical media consent. No,
Oh yeah.
for your
Another thing.
batteries. What do they need to consent to?
It was an issue of, you know, something that they're not really familiar with, right? So
Okay.
they needed some customs clearance.
Okay,
That's
all
where they
right.
sort of held up.
My friend Sunny left. No, maybe he was afraid I will ask him. But Jason, two items as energy secretary.
Okay, so number one, I think I mentioned it earlier, the lifting of the ECC moratorium, right? So that's something, because the market is there already. In terms of the permits, you need that ECC to actually really move forward. Another thing is a mechanism to allow private developers to advance transmission lines, because these are big bodies of water. And obviously, these are situated in the middle of nowhere, right? If it's inland, it's through a hydroelectric plant, and most of the transmission lines are already congested. So there have been talks to allow private developers to advance expansions of transmission lines, but we haven't seen any concrete movement there yet. Maybe private developers or any third party can do the land acquisition for transmission lines, but anything that would really advance it, I would suppose. So those are the two things, and the third really, if I may, Jay, no, obviously tariffs right now, I mentioned earlier, it's marginal, but at the end of the day, floating solar is risky. It's new in the market. Um, Weather is very it's very volatile. You can have good operations for the first 5, 7 years, then typhoon suddenly wipes it out, right? So you have to price in that risk. And as developers, we look at the totality of the project, not just the project in itself, but for example, reputational risk. If we fail to deliver on our promise, you sign a contract with JEA for like 15, 20 years, I suppose, right? And you fail to deliver your promise in 7 years' time because of a big typhoon, you get exposed to replacement power, then suddenly your relations with the local government is also strained, right? So we look at the totality of the project and everything we need to price in that risk.
All right. Well, Jason, one of the issues for ECC, as raised by the government, is because you're covering a massive area over the sea. In your own technical know-how, knowledge, is there an effect on the fish and the marine life under that?
For Magat, for example, I showed earlier, we have a service contract of 1,300 hectares, but we're only going to use around 110 of it.
Okay.
Because we want to respect the fisher folk in the area. We don't want to impede their livelihood, right? So in our perspective, there's actually ways around it. There's a good compromise.
Okay, but do fish survive in the dark, or do suddenly they have two heads? What happens there? Again,
so sure.
for lack of knowledge, maybe yes.
So I guess
right.
Jason's gonna buy a Briso anyway. So we have actually our Briso is not kind of fully covering the water surface. We have 50% sunlight penetration, more or less, and fish actually likes to be in the shade as long as it doesn't cover basically the full water body. So, but it's there's a lot of studies on this, a lot of going back and forth. But I think at least what we see at our pilot is that it's a lot of marine growth on the system itself, and we allows for it. And yeah, we have I don't know, but tons of mussels just growing on our system, and it works well.
Right. In fact, I don't know if anyone here has been in the Malampaya platform. It's a natural gas platform. The fish under the platform are so huge because they're covered. So I don't know if that's an effect, no, of not having sunlight.
I'm not sure. I'm a
Maybe
finance guy, so.
Cindy, you have some data on that?
Actually, I interviewed fishermen or people who fish in these waters in Japan, Yumakura Dam, in the Poryong Dam in Korea, and also our small pilot here in the Philippines. And consensus is it actually helps fish growth and on other sea creatures.
So more and more fish come out,
more fish.
but not
it
two
forms
heads,
a reef,
right?
No, not
Okay.
mutants, no.
All right.
Thank you.
Martin, your two items to make sure that floating solar development will progress in the Philippines.
Yeah. So as been discussed here, has not been a lot of floating PV in higher energy environments. So, and I think what we hear a lot from the developers is that it's difficult to get insurance for these big projects, especially for Laguna Lake or any projects where you have waves or extreme wind speeds. So I think maybe to support the developers taking that risk, or kind of make some programs for technology development or technology testing. That would be my.
All right. Jazz, any two items you think you should implement if you become the energy secretary? Anyway, you can pass off as a Filipino, right?
I get it a lot in Singapore as well. I think basically looking at what other countries are doing, perhaps what came to my mind is perhaps there could be revising the tariff rates, maybe. Like it's to basically to force developers to look into places where they can implement large solars. And we are looking at, water bodies, obviously, right? So this could be one way. And the other one could be, on top of my first idea, the other one could be perhaps giving grants or subsidies, or perhaps even make a policy to actually say you want to have a certain, you want to develop a certain power, it has to be at a certain location, or maybe even a certain method, that could be tied down with other policies as well. Yeah, these are my thoughts.
All right, thank you. JJ, you've had experience of putting up BESS in the Philippines.
Yep.
How about 2 items that you will implement as Energy Secretary?
So first, I'm coming from Singapore, so probably I'm not qualified to.
You're not qualified, but pretend you're Filipino.
Yeah, but what I feel there, right? So we have been working together with Snap team and together to develop the best project. But what I feel compared to some other country as well, feels a bit complicated, and the process sometimes is a bit tedious when they're trying to develop a project. We know how much Jason and his team is suffering from that, and we have to stand by to support as well. I hope to promote, right, is probably something that they can do to simplify the process and give a bit of tolerance to the people who want to develop a renewable energy resource in Philippines. Yeah.
All right. And then, Anders, would you like to add to that? 2 items you want to implement.
Since I'm on very deep water, I'll answer very high level. But like financiers always do, I think it's attractive tariffs and I guess a stable and predictable regulatory regime, right? So having sufficient bandwidth and for developers to take that risk on maybe their first initial projects as well, but seeing that we can move this over time and it can become a large market. So those were 2. I'll add the third one after Jason's comment in general as well, is what we do see, and this is across many markets, is a lack of investment in transmission infrastructure and connections, right? Because there might be good projects, both on floating, on onshore, whatever you're developing, but having access and sufficient connection and transmission upgrades as well is a general lack.
All right. Joey, did I ask you already? Your two items. All right. Well, Anders, we're so happy you're back. No, Norfund is finally back in the Philippines. Let me ask you: is there a minimum threshold for investment purposes for you? Are you looking at a particular minimum megawatt before Norfund invests in a project?
In general, I'd say we look at $5 to $10 million of minimum investment tickets, but we can definitely do $100 million as well. So it depends, but typically not lower than that. We have a limited team and limited bandwidth, unfortunately, to do smaller projects.
Okay, 5 million would be around what? 7 megawatts, right?
It depends, but we have to be minority investor as well. So there's certain complications we can discuss later. But
okay,
yes, it has certain size to it, or at least a pathway to size.
But you will not require majority, or you will require majority ownership?
No, we cannot do. So we need to go alongside other developers as well and help them offset their equity check, typically.
Okay, because you had a 50-50 with Aboitiz, right? So it's not.
We did.
Okay, all right. Well, that's a good sign, no? So they're not asking for majority ownership. No, they are willing to invest in any project, well, a viable project. Let me go back to investments. Cindy, last year I asked the same question. No? Again, I don't see the Philippines in your list of pilot projects, right? Can we do some pilot project? You know, when we talk about islands, there's so many islands in the Philippines. And in fact, I can name 2 that have electricity problems, no? Siargao and Siquijor. You know, you can see why, you know, because people go there for the beach, no? Is there an opportunity for these islands to be financed by ADB with a pilot project? And what should they do?
Okay, I'm responding unilaterally, as but no, I mean we are looking into it. In fact, we have secured sort of the grant funding to look at pilots for floating PV, as well as I guess mentioned tidal, because that's where we're going now as floating PV is moving into commercial stage, and even in the Philippines, it's actually quite commercial, particularly for freshwater. But if you're talking about nearshore marine, then definitely we are looking into it. And grant funding, unfortunately, is harder to find, especially these days with geopolitics around climate. So we are looking to have other sources of funding. Maybe Norfund will be able to assist for piloting or demonstrating in the what would say priority sites in the Philippines, because they do have. I mean, the government already has created some kind of mapping of where floating PV could be viable or where tidal energy could be viable. So we are discussing with them how to prioritize, and maybe pull in some pilot funding for a smaller pilot. Thank you.
All right. So we need funding from Norfund with the technology of Fred Olsen and the design of DNV, right?
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
And the batteries from Hitachi, right?
Okay,
Complete.
so let's have another discussion after this.
All right. In the island of Siquijor. All right?
Oh yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah. Or Siargao. No, geopolitics is not, an issue there, because when you have no power, people will certainly accept you, no, as project proponents. And speaking of technology, Martin, I'd like to ask you. It was mentioned earlier that we have 21 storms, no, as Jason pointed out, based on your studies, no? And I understand that's a Singapore institute, energy institute, that validated your technology. Can your technology withstand all the storms here in the Philippines?
It's been designed to withstand these typhoons. So, but it's analysis, so we need to, or we at least want to test it in practice before we kind of get the final validation. So, but at least the waves is no issue, and then the question is these extreme wind speeds. But we have done the CFD analysis, and it shows that we can handle it. So, yeah.
So yes, they can
Yes.
withstand the typhoons.
Yes, but we would like to see it actually in the water.
All right. Jason, your pilot project, you mentioned earlier there were technical issues. Was that a typhoon issue?
Yes.
It was.
It was a typhoon issue.
And that was not obviously a Fred Olsen technology.
It wasn't.
All right.
It
There
wasn't.
you go. Okay, but so it was destroyed by typhoon.
Yes. So we decommissioned it, and I'll try to share what I can, right?
Yeah.
So a few months back, a typhoon which is not as strong as we expected actually hit, and then the installation sustained some major damage, right? So between the volatility of weather and at the same time how floating solar technology moves very quickly, I think those actually contributed to what happened, right? So when we did our root cause analysis, we found out that in the span of 5 years, there's a lot more sophisticated technologies out there already, right? So I guess at the end of the day, the question is, how do we, as developers, how do we make ourselves comfortable with everything that's out there, right? I mean, I'm comfortable with Martin, right? But with the technology, we have to sort of review how do we actually put our heads together, the technology providers, DNV, financing institutions, insurances. Definitely, at the end of the day, an EPC is an exercise of sharing risk, right? So how do we make sure that we cover all those gaps?
All right. Maxine, maybe you can give free advice to Jason. No? If you were the one that put up that pilot project, no, and Joey, what would you do differently to make sure that it can withstand the typhoon?
Well, as what I've discussed in my presentations, I know that it's inevitable right now, and we are still in the process of developing probably solutions in these problems. But as DNV, I don't want to talk as DNV, but but I'm part of it. But probably I'll work more on the or prepare since Jason already mentioned that they didn't anticipate some things that could happen, and in as that's actually aligned with what I presented, that preparing for real world conditions is a must before, since from the very beginning, you have to start from the very beginning planning for real world conditions. And probably if we are piloting the project that time, we could have anticipated and create, probably make a feasibility study, a more comprehensive feasibility study to ensure the continuous development of the project.
Okay. But Jason, was that total destruction? That pilot project because of the typhoon? It's
I'm
okay.
trying to look for the right word, right?
Alright.
So it was critical damage, I would say.
All right.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Okay. All right.
It's a good synonym.
Okay. We have a lot of questions here on the iPad, but if there's an, I'll give opportunity to the audience first if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll read questions here. No? Speakers talked about best technologies with demonstration projects. Should I know the specific characteristics needed to consider for the Philippines? Maybe this is something for Jazz to answer. What type of BESS systems are suitable for the Philippines?
I think first and foremost, because the Philippines, we are here operating on 60 hertz. Unlike the other Southeast Asian countries, 50 hertz here is a bit different. So that it also depends, because I think in that way, the design of the energy system will be a bit different as compared to a 50 hertz. So to implement the energy storage in Philippines is not much difference actually. If you think about it, not much different how you want to implement in CNI, in a EV charging space, or even for peak shaving, whatever it is, it still applies. Because if we look at 60 hertz, we are looking at places like Japan and America as well, and they are pretty much doing the same thing. So, did I answer the question?
Yeah. Jazz, there's a follow-up question to that. No?
Oh, yeah.
Is there anyone who could share the world's largest BESS project so far? And what is the current price of BESS nowadays?
Okay, I think this is, I have to tread carefully here. Um,
It's okay. We will not hold you down to that price.
No, I think because I speak for Asia market, we are obviously quite dominated by the Chinese market. So if we look at the Chinese prices, it's relatively low on battery system. Not talking about the full system, just the batteries, you were talking about $100 per kilowatt. If you are looking to even put into the mix your inverters, your modules, the cabinets, we could be looking maybe slightly higher, maybe about $150 per kilowatt. So it's a very challenging market to price, I would say, especially in Southeast Asia. But when we look at energy storage, it's more like we are trying to sell a solution, not really a product. It's a tool that you can use to not only provide peak shaving or backup, but to actually generate some profit as well using arbitrage or VPP, virtual power plant.
Largest BESS
Largest BESS
in the
world,
universe?
in the universe.
Yeah.
Well, I've never been to Mars, but maybe just for planet Earth, the largest I've heard, I think it was 30 gigawatts. If I'm not wrong, this is in China. I recently reached out to one of the guy over there who told me they're doing 30 gigawatts.
One project.
Yeah, one project, but it's like across a huge landscape. Yeah.
It's huge.
It's huge. It's huge. Yes. Yes.
All right.
Quite ridiculous. Huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why they've been manufacturing a lot of batteries, right? And selling it at low price.
Yeah.
Low price is good for the Philippines, as you know, right? Because we're just second to your country in terms of electricity prices, right? So it would be nice to lower our electricity cost.
Right.
Yeah. And in fact, over time, we have seen how hydro has lowered that cost. Anders, that's your experience with your previous Norfund collaboration with the Boities, where you built all those large hydro dams, right? And you've been able to offer cheaper electricity prices to the consumers, right? Okay. Jay, would you like to add to best costing?
Yeah.
How much is it cheaper?
No, I think we will talk about the battery cost, right? People are want to get a sense because the battery component, even looking to the project, right? So battery cost probably account for 60-70% of the total project cost. So people always trying to look into the battery price to get a sense how much it is now, whether I can go ahead or whether I need to do a feasibility study now. But I think all in all, we need to look into the whole development cost in different projects, where is the connection points, the land acquisition, the space, and also the civil construction work as well. All those are big portion as well coming into the picture. So yeah, for sure, it's okay you follow up on the battery price, but in the meanwhile, I think people need to be realistic and look into your project profile, and to really understand whether there's business opportunity or not, to make a decision based on that, not really on the battery price itself alone.
So battery cost is not an issue in your mind. They're
For me-
cheap enough.
I mean, in short term, right? So look back 12 months, 24 months ago, we see there's a big fluctuation on the price because of demand supply, right? But looking to the long term, you will see the trend of the battery cost is getting down. Long run, the price going to keep moving down, but just in short term, you have the volatility. Yeah, this is the risk we need to manage.
All right. Jason, you mentioned you're joining the green energy auction for floating solar. One of the few I know who will join, no?
Yeah.
Given the current 5.9 pesos per kilowatt hour initial price of ERC. Two things. One, how much price do you need to make sure you will participate? It doesn't hurt to wish for a price, no?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that that's one of my three wishes, right? A higher tariff. But at least from my side, because we need to price in the risk ultimately, and there's a lot of uncertainty there. But doing the numbers, right? I also feel that 5.9 works for certain developers. It's going to be very tight. I mentioned to you when we were chatting earlier, you don't have a lot of margin for error, right? I think for certain projects like ours, because we're co-located, and that's the beauty of being co-located, you have a lot of synergies. You can share people in terms of operations and maintenance, so you'll be able to squeeze a little bit more. But at the end of the day, we don't like that, exercise. What would give me more comfort is, you know, advancing transmission lines, giving me recourse in terms of, a typhoon comes in, for example, and unexpectedly causes damage, giving me recourse in terms of replacement power or giving me relief, right? So I think those are the things that I'm looking at more than just the price itself.
Okay, but that's difficult to obtain, right? So can you give us a price that will make you happy?
I'd rather not.
No?
Right.
Okay, all right. I tried. All right. Any questions from the audience? Klaus, do we still have time? Because we're beyond the allotted time. Anyone would like to ask? Yes. Please state your name, ma'am, and the organization you work for.
Namaskar, I'm Ranju Pandey from Nepal. I have one question about you talk about the failure of the floating solar and managing the risk mitigation. If such type of incident happen, then how you transfer or remove or mitigate the risk? Because it is something you told us that it is risky. Uh, so it is better to have in land or to have the floating solar. So if you can say it in detail, then it would be better.
Okay, that's a good question. May I ask, does Nepal have floating solar projects? Do you have one?
We don't have, but we have one storage project. We are planning to have on that, but it is in the preliminary phase. It's
Okay.
not,
And does Nepal suffer from typhoons like we do?
no,
No.
we suffer from landslide and
Okay. So it's better to have floating solar, in your case, not ground mounted, right? Because of the landslide. The question is, with all the risks of floating solar, no, is there preference for ground mounted versus floating? What would be best to do? No, or which type of project would you take? Maybe we'll ask Jason. Jason, based on your experience, you've had ground-mounted projects and floating.
It used to be that ground mounted is easier to develop, right? Before, in the previous regime, during the feed-in tariff regime, like 10 years back, you pull out the map, take a look at, do a PV cyst analysis and say that, okay, hey, there's good irradiation in this area, I'd apply for a service contract, right? Even without speaking to the landowners themselves. You can actually apply and reserve the sun resource in that particular area for solar. Then you can proceed talking to the landowner, right, and secure the rights, right? So imagine that. You can actually apply for a solar service contract without actually speaking to the landowner. Okay, so what happened was that, there's lots of developers who did that, and landowners who wanted to develop their own utility scale solar suddenly realized that, hey, somebody else reserved it. Okay, so during that time, I think it was easier to develop. So the Department of Energy made changes. So now, before you can actually apply for a service contract, you should have been able to reserve the land and talk to the landowner, which actually makes more sense. Okay, so I guess it's a little bit more difficult now. It comes with its own challenges, primarily land. Now, floating solar, it's a little bit, and it's hard to develop, as mentioned earlier, the weather risk, but you also need to resolve, surface lease agreements. Okay, for me, I guess there's a space for both, right? There's a space for both, especially for specific areas in the country. There are certain hotspots, quote unquote, in the Philippines where a lot of people are moving towards a particular area for land-based solar. A good example would be in the Visayas in the Philippines, because that is where you'd be able to speak to one person who owns hundreds of hectares, right? So there's a preference for that. And floating solar, for example, you'll see it more in the northern part of the Philippines, in Luzon, right? So I guess for both, it's really on a case by case basis.
So it's easier to build on ground mounted, right?
Yes.
But we're running out of land.
Exactly.
Right? Or
Exactly.
we're running out of cheap land. That's why we're moving towards floating, right? And with the government, if you look at the government has a 50% target for installation target for in the entire energy mix, no, the power mix. That's 27 gigawatts of solar that we need to put up by 2040. Now, where do we put it out there, no? If land is already scarce or becoming more expensive. That's why we are now looking at floating solar, which easily in massive scale, 1 gigawatt, you can easily put it out there, provided the fish is safe, right? With our ECC, you don't have two heads all of a sudden, but two heads not bad, right? But we need to address also the policy challenges for that, right? As we develop technology. Yes, Klaus, one more question. The last one. Oh, we have two. We have three now. Everyone is alive.
Yes, thank you. My name is Wenhao Wang. I'm from a Chinese tech company called Tencent, and I'm from the carbon neutrality lab of Tencent. And we are a special department of our company. We are trying to looking for the low carbon technologies and try to use our funding and technology to have the pilot projects to help the business growth. So we are now trying to promoting a project in Maldives with ADB to have a long duration energy storage. So when we go to Maldives, the government recommending that we're considering that this is floating PV plus the long duration energy storage equipment to solve the island their carbon emission problem, to have the higher penetration of renewables. So what I want to ask about the speakers, the question is that how do you see the new type of energy storage like the flow batteries and other non-lithium energy storage in their future in Southeast Asia, especially the island countries? And also, is that the floating PV plus the like flow battery can be a solution to the situations in island countries? Thank you.
All right, thank you. There's a volunteer for funding islands in the Philippines. Cindy, maybe you can talk to Tencent later on. No? Yeah? Yes? Okay. Jay, is that something for you to answer, the technology on batteries?
Yeah, I think that first thing we need to realize nowadays the battery, just come back to Hitachi, right? So XADB power grid. Before the lithium-based technology become the dominant technology in the market, you have different kind of energy storage system as well, pump hydro, you have flywheel battery, lead acid as well, all kinds of technology. Nowadays, why we see lithium-based technology is dominant technology because of the EV segment. That's where, all the production, 80% goes to the EV, less 20% goes to the energy storage system. So who is going to determine which technology is going to be on the market? Even now, the short end as well, because the challenging on the low temperature operation of the EV. So that's where it determines the technology, right? So, but what I can say now that firstly, floating battery probably not a good idea because of the battery still chemistry, right?
Flow batteries.
Flow battery, okay. I think it's a good solution as well, right? So it's just that it probably requires large space for installation, right? So you have a different technology you can try, but it looks like for me, at least for now, lithium-based technology is still the most cost-effective, and also in terms of maturity as well, and also cycling operation cost as well, still looks much better compared to others. But for sure, we will see probably some other new things coming up. Again, for me, the ESS, the battery storage technology is still quite, follow depends on the EV segments.
Who's developing flow battery technology now? And maybe keep developing it.
Yeah, we are trying to looking for the best tech provider. Right now, we have a program online called the CarbonX program. It kind of like the Tesla's CarbonX. Yes, we are trying in this session. We make a call on the global area and try to collect the best the flow batteries or other the tech provider, which whatever technology is, as long as you can solve the problem on the island. So we just finished the first round of selection, and right now there's 92 different teams applied this program, and half of them near flow batteries, and there are some also solutions like compressed air and hydrogen, and so we are trying to working with ADB together and other experts to select the best providers. Yes.
Okay, and you can do a pilot project in the Philippines for that.
We are trying to see what project goes out for the Maldives, and then we'll scale up together with ADB. Yeah.
It's okay, move to the Philippines. I mean, Maldives is a good place, right?
Yes.
But maybe consider one of our islands.
Yeah, maybe together we plus the no funds and also to join the floating PV and BESS initiatives with ADB.
All right. By the end of this session, we will sign an agreement with you guys. Okay? Okay, now we have two more. I saw two more hands. Yes, sir. And then finally you.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Alan Aguinaldo from Tractable. As we are talking about, everybody is focused on Laguna Lake, and I understand that one of the gentlemen show us a map with a vivid three geographies. On that specific area is Muntinlupa and I believe Canlubang. And to my knowledge, many are focusing in that area. By any chance, maybe the ADB could be able to include in its study, in its roadmap study, a commission study of a comprehensive wave study for the whole or at least a strategic area in the Laguna Lake so that we can at least prevent failures happening in the future.
Okay, this is a study on floating solar, right, Alan? Cindy, you mentioned that earlier, right? It's in the works where ADB is considering a roadmap, right?
Yes, thank you. I believe there's already some kind of assessments done. That's why they came up with the 16 gigawatts of potential in Laguna Lake. If you're talking about I guess the outskirts, Canlubang, Muntinlupa, I'm sure there's already data available. LLDA and of course the DOE will have those. But the roadmap we're talking is more of nearshore marine,
Okay.
not freshwater.
Okay, and can you expand that study, that roadmap, to include freshwater?
Yes, I mean we can always explore, and of course it depends if DOE requests us
Okay.
to do it.
Okay, we'll make sure DOE will request you. All right. There's so many ADB World Bank funds going around, right? But in terms of floating solar, we're behind. No? World Bank did the roadmap for offshore wind. No? My colleague and I were part of that. No? And then UNOPS did the Marine Spatial Plan again for offshore wind. But I've not seen any study for floating solar. No? So perhaps we need to do that to push the development in the Philippines. And then maybe ADB can identify which areas would be good for floating solar projects. That's what the roadmap for offshore wind. Yes, Cindy?
Well, the way ADB works, this is going to be based on a technical assistance, but since the Philippines is what we consider already middle income or upper middle income
We are
country.
already.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that means that it will not be provided as a grant. It will have to be some kind of reimbursable technical assistance. But the idea is if the government prioritizes it, we can help them develop that kind of assistance.
Okay. I did not. I wonder if World Bank considers us also as middle income, and therefore the technical assistance is paid for or
Yeah.
reimbursed. Same.
Reimbursable. No.
Also, all right. I did not know that. Okay. One more question because we're here. The gentleman on the left.
Thanks a lot for a very interesting session. A lot of learning. My name is Balvan Joshi, and I am from Idam Infrastructure Advisory. We are a consulting company. I have got a couple of questions, but I will be quick. The first question is for Jason. Like-to-like basis, excluding land and power evacuation cost, what do you expect to be the difference between the cost of a marine based floating solar and land-based solar project? Say 1 megawatt solar project. I will just complete all the three then, The second one is for Anders. For the marine-based floating solar project and land-based floating solar project, what is the kind of a additional hurdle rate that you would be looking for while you are making investment? And finally to Cindy, floating solar on marine, have you looked at near shore wind as an option in Philippines or any of these studies, especially in SIDS countries, because that appears to be quite interesting option.
Right. So for the first question, I think it was ground-mounted versus floating solar, right?
Yeah, and marine, not Sweetwater, not lake-based.
Oh, not lake-based.
Comparative land cost is what he's asking.
Yeah, I can.
Excluding land cost.
Okay, excluding land cost, I can answer land versus inland, right? Inland water, and then maybe Martin, you can give your thoughts on nearshore or offshore, right? So I think a good rule of thumb would be double the price compared to land-based solar in terms of EPCs, right? In terms of O&M is going to increase as well, operations and maintenance. Transmission line costs would also increase. Insurances, everything is actually going to increase compared to land-based.
Yeah, so I think it's very much related to the wave heights and the anchor mooring forces. So it's basically the anchor mooring cost which will increase with the higher waves. So for us, looking at up to 2-meter HS, I believe we are probably 20% more expensive than kind of the standard out there today. And then, but if you want to push it up to 3.5-meter HS, it's probably 40% higher than the current inland solutions.
Well, the rule of thumb before, if I can answer that same question, the rule of thumb before was it will be an additional 20% in cost, but also an additional 20% in yield. So that means it actually breaks even. But I guess it's a case-to-case basis, and especially in the Pacific where there's actually no land available, they have no choice but to go to the water. And we've seen that twice or 3 times the cost for, in the northern territories, for example, up, above the equator, not in a small island country. So it's really, everything is going to be double the price in the Pacific context, at least double. And on your question, this is actually, to be honest, the first time I've heard about nearshore wind, because I guess by definition, they will need a lot of depth already just for the foundations for an offshore, for the wind to be floating, right? In fact, if it's near shore, it's just going to be on the land, on the seabed, not actually floating, right? So, we haven't looked into that because there are still a lot of low-hanging fruits when it comes to nearshore marine renewables. You have tidal, you have ocean thermal energy conversion, you have wave, and of course floating PV. So those are the TRLs that we are looking at, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I'll answer the second question on return. Look, as I showed you, we have not financed a lot of floating solar, right? So we don't have necessarily a hurdle specifically for that. Our capital is commercial capital. It has to make a commercial return. And I think as Jason was pointed out, right, it's how much risk are you taking with that technology, right? Of course, it is higher risk, right, compared to something that's bankable and proven as well. Exactly how much that difference is, I'd have to assess on the project-specific basis, more than that, okay, you should add so much on floating.
All right. But the difference between near shore and offshore comes into play when we now look at the gear price, the auction price, because the ERC, the regulator, is looking at having 2 different tiers for fixed bottom and floating wind. So you're correct. Maybe it's something that the government needs to look at. What would be the differentiation between near shore, which I assume would be fixed bottom, and floating, right? So it's something for us to consider. All right. Any other question? So we're good? I guess we're beyond the schedule. All right. Well, I'd like to thank each of the panelists for your time. Just a parting word, I asked them that question because I know nobody's qualified to be energy secretary because they're foreigners, or for the developers, there's a law that prohibits them to become energy secretary. But nonetheless, there are 2 points that stood out. Now, one, making sure that the government processes are efficient. And we hear that all the time. And number 2, of course, price is always an issue. So hopefully we can address both. And finally, next year, if we do this again, Ambassador, I hope there's a first floating solar project so that we don't continue to talk about theories here, and finally build a huge floating solar project. So with that, thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you for your time today. And we'll have one picture, maybe the ambassador.